You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The Iron Lady sings, that makes it official. Welcome to 16 years of the Chris Voss Show, going on 17 and over 2,200 episodes that you can binge over there on the Chris Voss Show. You know, the great thing about the Chris Voss Show is you can find just about any darn topic, any darn expert on the show over all these years. So go over there and just hit play and just consume the playlist like it's going out of style. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss on the TikTokity, all this crazy place on the internet, as we always say. We have an amazing young lady on the show today. We'll be talking with Sarah Wellband, and she has spent 20 years as a hugely successful independent mortgage broker in London and Dublin before retiring in central Portugal in 2007, where she fulfilled a lifelong ambition of owning horses. And those things are expensive, folks. Let me tell you, I've got some friends that own horses. That's no easy trade there. You got to buy some things. Retirement it's almost so expensive as my espresso addiction. Retirement didn't last as long as the horse herd grew, and she ran a trail riding center before qualifying in an equine assistant training.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm still learning the horse trade. Using the incredible nonverbal body language of horses to teach people how to improve their own communication skills. There's one of them kicking, when the horse does that kick and knocks people out. I love that on TikTok. COVID forced Sarah to pause this enterprise so she could turn to self-study and qualified to level 4 in cognitive behavioral therapy before training in remedial hypnosis with Tim Box, the founder of Control System Modality, and she subsequently qualified as a Control System Workshop presenter. Welcome to the show, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, Chris.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Did I get your last name correctly? I spun that out as I was reading your bio.
That's okay. Wellband. It's exactly as it sounds. It's a very unusual name. I'm the only Sarah Wellband in the world, so easy to find.
There you go, Sarah Wellband. So welcome to the show. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Yep, I've got two main ones. One is outofchaostherapy.com. So out of chaos. There's a very famous saying called out of chaos comes order. So outofchaostherapy.com. And the simpler one is thecontrolpractitioners.com.
Okay. And give us a 30,000 overview, what you do over there.
Yeah, so people often get worried about the word hypnosis. They think they're going to lose control. They associate it with stage hypnosis, where people are made to do stupid things and in the name of entertainment. What I do with my colleagues is what's called remedial hypnosis, which means that we don't use a trance. We don't put people to sleep. We don't have a little watch going and go tick-tock, tick-tock, your eyes getting heavy, that type of stuff. What we do is we talk directly to the person's subconscious mind. So to explain, you've got a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. At the moment, you're using your conscious, rational, logical mind, but underneath the surface, the subconscious is in charge of your emotions, your creativity, your imagination, all the things that, your automatic thoughts and actions. A good example, when you get in your car to drive home, you don't think, I'm going to put the key in the ignition, I'm going to turn the key, I'm going to put my foot on the pedal. No, you just go, I'm going to drive, and your subconscious handles all the boring stuff. Okay. Nice. But the subconscious is where all your issues lie. Phobias, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, problems such as tinnitus, migraines, pain when there shouldn't be pain. All those things are situated below the surface in your subconscious. And the best way to describe this, are you a fan of Star Trek, Chris? You watch
I
Star
know Star Trek. I mean, it's a good show. People really love it.
Do you remember who was your captain? Was it Picard or was it Kirk?
I'm the original Kirk because I grew up in the 70s.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So if you imagine Kirk, if you imagine your mind is like the Starship Enterprise, and Kirk is your conscious, logical, rational mind. So Kirk knows where the ship's going to go, what the mission is, how to get things done. Okay, he can think deeply and solve problems, but he can't fly the ship on his own. He needs a whole crew to do everything from the washing up to keeping the place clean, and it's a team effort. Okay. So if you imagine Kirk is your conscious mind, the crew is the subconscious. So the crew are in charge of helping him fly the Enterprise. If the captain and the crew are all working together, all working towards the same goal, that's great. But if part of the crew think, actually, I'm not that keen on Klingons, we're not going near the Klingons this week because I'm scared of them. Then, okay, I'll give you a more real life example. Say, if somebody was at school and they stood up when they were at junior school and made a complete mess of giving a presentation to the rest of the class. A little part of their crew, a little part of their subconscious will go, we're never doing that again. It was awful. We hate that feeling. We're embarrassed. It was the worst feeling in the world. That person gets to 25 and they're in their first job. And their boss says, you can give a presentation to the rest of the staff. That part of the crew will go, we're not doing that. And we'll do whatever is necessary to make sure that you do not go through that experience again. Even though now you want to, you're saying this is part of my career.
Yeah.
So the things that we learn in the first 10 years of life are called the core beliefs. So up until about the age of 10 years old, you don't have the ability to think rationally. You don't have the ability to decide what you're learning is right or wrong, whether what you're being told is true or not. And the best example of that is if you ask the average 5-year-old to believe that there's a man in a red suit who's going to be flying around the world, delivering presents to every kid on the planet, that 5-year-old will go, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
That concept is fine. Okay. So they will believe that. And there are so many things that we learn in that first 10 years of life that become part of who we are.
Yeah.
We say, okay, I'm not very good at sports, or I'm not great at languages, or, I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. There are positives as well, but it tends to be the negative ones that stay with us. And they stay with us into adulthood. Sorry.
Why do you think it's the negative ones that stay with us?
I think humans are programmed to be slightly negative. If ancient caveman had wandered out of his cave in the morning and said, you know what, it's a nice day, I'm not going to take my spear with me, it wouldn't have lasted very long. So we're always we're inherently programmed to be slightly cautious, to just be a little bit more careful. And I think
protection, maybe
protection, yes, survival. Yeah. I mean, I can remember nice things being said to me, but the things that hurt, the things that wounded me, I can remember those a lot more. Readily.
Maybe we tend to retain those, for fight or flight information. For future reference. One of the things we've talked about with psychologists on the show, and it's kind of a recurring theme through trauma discussions, is a lot of times too in that probably I wonder if there's a difference between before 10 and after 10, but a lot of things that happen in our childhood, they shape us, and there's blueprints that we get from our parents and their relationship with each other. And but sometimes we repress things from that era, and because we trauma, big T trauma, kind of overwhelms the brain. It seems like the brain kind of will put it away for a while and then bring it back later when it feels we're maybe mature enough to handle it. But in the meantime, all that stuff's affecting us, I think.
Yeah, trauma is something that I work with a lot, and it sounds weird, but I enjoy it because it's very easy.
You enjoy trauma?
I enjoy working with trauma and
There
fixing
you
trauma.
go. There you go.
Um,
I enjoy giving people trauma. I'm a boss of employees, so that's what I do. You know, you got to give the kids something to be in therapy over for this.
yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
the job of any good
They've
parent.
got to spend their inheritance on something.
Inheritance? What is this? I'm not giving my kids inheritance.
Yeah, trauma is a really good one. So
Mhm.
when something happens, especially to children, again, a part of their subconscious, part of the crew will go, what happened? What happened? Was I responsible? Did I do something? Could I have avoided it?
Mhm.
And that part of the subconscious will go to all the efforts, and it happens in adulthood as well,
Mhm.
to figure out exactly what happened for the express reason of avoiding it in the future.
Oh.
So if you're an adult and you have a car accident and you go, oh, what did that happen? Your subconscious said, you were on your phone, you were texting, don't do it again. That's why the accident happened.
To teach you lessons so you learn and protect yourself in the
Exactly.
future. Yeah.
But
Okay.
sometimes things in life are so random that there's just no reason. Or with children, unfortunately, the people involved can't or won't explain their part in it.
Those
So
dumb people.
the mind is going, I need to find out, I need to find out. And it will keep on going, which is why trauma often results in flashbacks, in nightmares, in recurrent thoughts, because it's going on that hamster wheel. I need to figure it out. I need to figure it out. Okay.
Oh wow.
And what I do is basically contact or connect with that part of the subconscious and say, you'll never find an answer. We call it the unsolvable puzzle. So if I said, here's a jigsaw puzzle, which will explain exactly what happened, but half the pieces are missing and some white paint got in there over the years, and you will never figure it out. And then that part of the subconscious will just say, okay, then I'll stop. Because the subconscious only has an interest in solving problems which are solvable.
Oh really? Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Why a lot of people have a lot of unresolved trauma and unresolved issues.
Yeah. So you
I'm
say,
57 and single and dating. There's a lot of unresolved issues in the market. And you're like, you
but
never got this fixed
there's
from
hope, Chris.
childhood, did you?
There's hope.
There you go. Send them to you. There you go.
So yeah, I had a lady, you never forget what happened, but what happens is you break the emotional connection. So there is no, you can look at the events and say, okay, that it's like it happened to somebody else. You know, it's not affecting me anymore. So I can remember it, I can think about it, I can talk about it, because I don't have that emotional bond anymore.
Wow. And that really helps. And then you don't do it through, everyone when they say hypnotism, they think of, it always takes me back to 1920s black and white Hollywood movies where you're like, ooh, so I imagine it's much easier to work with because I don't know how I think hypnosis works. You have to allow yourself to be hypnotized. So does it take many sessions? Is it something that can be done fairly quickly, or is it something you have to kind of work in because a lot of this stuff can be really ingrained in someone's life?
Okay, so first of all, obviously it can be done via Zoom. I work 90% of my work is online. About 10% of people respond incredibly well to the subconscious coming forward and talking. About 10% of people don't respond at all. And most people are sort of in between somewhere. It's about 80%. Okay. What I always do is I start with a free initial consultation because one, it's really important to make sure that I can work with what the person wants to work with.
Oh yeah.
Secondly, that we actually get on with each other because, you don't get on with everybody. And if they don't like me, I don't like them, then it's not a great recipe for success.
I've met those clients.
Yeah. But thirdly, to make sure that the subconscious will respond. And what we use to do that is what's called IMRs, which are idiomotor responses. So if I was to say, okay, I want the subconscious to move a finger, and I did this to you, and you said, hang on, I didn't move that finger. I didn't consciously move that finger. My subconscious did. So we have one movement for yes, one movement for no. And it's funny, and I can see the look on your face. It does freak people out because they have no concept of the body being able to move independently of you telling it what to do. But the body can. I mean, you see, I talk with my hands. Now, I'm not consciously making these movements. My hands are just deciding to talk. But that's what we do during that free initial consultation. We say, okay, let's try to see if your subconscious will communicate. Say probably 85-90% of people it does work. IMRs, interestingly, were probably what remember the old-fashioned seances where people would put their finger on a glass and the glass would move around the letters, and people would. You've never seen seances or Ouija board type things.
So that's they're actually subconsciously moving.
So that'd be subconscious, and everybody would swear blind that they hadn't moved the glass.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be. It would be the
kids.
Yeah, exactly. So the subconscious would be moving it, and they'd be saying, "No, it wasn't me. I didn't do it," and they didn't consciously. It was the subconscious that was doing it. Okay. So we have everything, and again, normally it's on a desk, but we have everything from the tiniest little movement to, oh my God, somebody's playing a piano.
Yeah.
And the subconscious is really like wanting to talk about all these issues, because the subconscious wants two things. It wants you to be happy and it wants you to be safe. And those two things come from childhood: happiness and safety. We think we are incredibly complex and deep and multifaceted people, individuals. We are so difficult, and things must take weeks and months and years. We're very simple creatures. We want to be safe. We want to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, do some people want to be happy, or they think they want to be happy and they pick miserable stuff? Because is that also part of the subconscious? Because I've seen people that espouse they want to be happy. I'm going to flip back to dating in 2024, but their behavior does something completely different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be that they don't know how to be happy, which is really sad when you think about it.
There we go.
Yeah, they have heard of this concept of happiness, but because of the way that life has shaped them, they don't know how to do it. The other thing is what's called a secondary gain. So secondary gain. If you have, for example, and I'm not speaking from experience at all, a mother who says, "You never visit me, you never come and see me, blah, 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 blah," and then you go and see her and she's still complaining, that's a secondary gain. So I will complain, I will be unhappy, I will be miserable, because that will make you do something that I want you to do.
It sounds a bit narcissistic too.
It's human nature. If I can't get you to do something that you want to do out of your own volition, I will make up a story. Narcissism is a term that's thrown around a lot these days. It's way overused, but I suppose there could be a touch of it in there.
Touch of it. I mean, imagine, a baby cries, right? And it wants attention or food, or, it's trying to communicate and it can't really communicate. Yeah. And so, imagine that would be kind of a selfish reason, and in one sense, and maybe there's an expansion of that as we go through stuff. But I see a lot of people that they talk one way about what they want, and you're like, well, never listen to what they say, watch their behavior. And I'll see people say one thing that they want, but their behavior isn't ever going to get them what they want.
Yes.
Because there's kind of self-sabotaging. And maybe that falls back to what you talked about earlier, where there's that Captain Kirk guy, and he's like, "Go forward, young man," or whatever those lines are from Star Trek. People are going to write me hate mail now if they're Star Trek fans. He doesn't say that. But the subconscious is like, nah, we're going to sabotage that because we're not comfortable with that. Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, it is. And it would be a good analogy because the subconscious, because you've had a bad experience, or you've been led to believe by people, your main caregivers when you were young, that you weren't capable of doing this thing, therefore don't make a fool of yourself because it'll end in tears. It's always interesting when people say, I've been anxious ever since I was a young child. Now, I don't know if you have kids, I don't, but I have seen children wander buck naked into a room full of adults, and you're thinking that child is not embarrassed or anxious or self-conscious. You know, children, as you say, they're completely selfish. They have to be.
Yeah.
They're completely egotistical. It's the whole world is about them.
Yeah.
Because they have to be.
I thought that was mostly teenagers. Honestly, I just had to do that joke.
Yeah.
They really, I think that's the peak pinnacle that they reach, you know, from youth.
Yeah. I wish this stuff was taught in schools. I wish the basics of CBT was taught in school, because there would be an awful lot less mental illness, mental health problems.
But where would the fun be in that?
Yeah.
The world would be really boring and no one would be on Twitter.
Well, yeah, that's true. But just going back to the other question you asked, because I'd forgotten to answer it. How long does it take? It takes 3 sessions. So we have the initial consultation. Okay. We have the first session where we do most of the work. Second session reinforces it. And in the third session, I teach people how to use the method on themselves. So much as it's doing me out of them coming back and spending more money with me, that's fine. You know, if people can actually talk to their own subconscious, it's so powerful. It's so. Have you ever said to somebody, "Oh, there's a part of me that says this. There's a part of me that thinks that"? Do you ever use that phrase?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, there's a bit of me that says we shouldn't do this or we should do that. When you talk that's a part of the subconscious. Part of the subconscious which is trying to do that protection. It's trying to keep you safe, keep you happy, stop you doing something.
Stop me doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, and
that won't make me happy. Maybe, I don't know.
The other way of looking at it is that, you know, there was so much that we learned in that first 10 years, which was relevant then. You know, the public speaking example I gave is a really good one. But you need to upgrade the system. So really something I've been working with a lot this year is weight control. When you're little and you're unhappy or you're tired or you're grizzly or you're upset, whatever, mum or dad will give you some chocolate, cookie, bit of cake, and instant happiness. Okay, so your subconscious goes, okay, sweet stuff equals happy. Easy, got that. But when you're young, you're not in charge of the of getting at the cookies, getting at the chocolate. So you get what you're given, and it's hopefully it's regulated. When you get older, you go, haha, I want to be happy. I'll eat some chocolate. I'll eat some cookies.
I'm buying the whole box.
Yeah, exactly. But what you find is that not only doesn't make you happy, it actually makes you unhappy, because you go, okay, I've got a problem at work. I'll go home. I'll eat some chocolate. That'll make me feel better, because it did when I was a kid. 2 hours later, you're feeling fat. You're feeling horrible. You still got the problem at work, and now you've just added to it.
I have that problem 40 years later. I'm still eating most of the chocolate or burgers that I ate over the last 40 years.
Okay. So again, it's a solution that worked when you're a child. When you're an adult, it doesn't work anymore. But that compulsion, that well, it worked. So therefore, keep trying. So again, breaking that emotional link between food and comfort, food and happiness. Once you do that, people go, okay, well, I'll just eat normally. I worked recently with a lady who'd actually had a gastric bypass. She'd had a full-on operation, bariatric surgery, because she was very overweight, and she was eating chocolate again. She said, I've spent all this money having surgery to reduce the size of my stomach, but I can't stop eating chocolate. At the end of the first session, she said, I really fancy a nice piece of melon now. And since then, she hasn't eaten any chocolate.
You know, I went through the same unfolding of stuff when I lost weight, and I was consuming. I should package was. I was doing 10 to 15 Mountain Dews a day, drinking vodka at night, and I think every other night, hitting a half a bottle of vodka. And then and it's mostly for the sugar. I mean, I get tired and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm like, I can do a few more deals if I just stay up. And so shot of whiskey or vodka at night would give me some juice and I could do more work.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, you're working 24/7, and so for me at first it was like just a sugar high. But I was eating at fast food restaurants all the time. I weighed probably close to 400 pounds, if not 400 pounds at one point.
Wow.
And then I read Penn Jillette's book Presto, and at the time I just was feeling miserable. I just felt like just a bag of stale quarter pounders or something from McDonald's.
Yeah.
That's a gross way to put an analogy together, Chris. I'm going to puke. Drive heave on the show. But I just felt awful and miserable. And I reached that point where you're just tired of feeling miserable. And I said, I don't know what needs to change, but I'm sick of everything and what I'm doing. And somehow I got to figure out how to change it. And what Penn Jillette's book did was it helped me recognize through his experience of recognizing this, his childhood reasons for why he would eat. Mom told him to finish everything on his plate.
Yeah.
Well, that's not always good, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
In the 70s, we didn't have high fructose corn syrup yet. I think at least in the early 70s,
Yeah.
we didn't have so much sugar in our food like we
And
do now.
we actually had smaller plates.
Yeah, because we couldn't afford those bigger plates. It was the 70s, man. There was a, but and so unpackaging, my mom and most moms at the store would say, hey, if you're a good kid, you get a reward. You can have a pop or you can have a candy bar. We leave if you're quiet, if you're good, you don't drive me crazy. My brother was really good driving my mom crazy. I think we all were. And so you got this reward thing. So I always had this weird thing in my head where when I would go to the counter, I'd be like, okay, well, I get a reward of a Coke and a giant ass chocolate Snickers or something.
Yeah.
And, so one of the things I realized with Presto, Penn Jillette's book and his experience was that's not a reward.
Yeah.
That's like drinking a gallon of bleach going, I get a reward for whatever. And you're like, this isn't healthy. It's not a reward. You're punishing your body.
Yeah.
And so I started untangling all these belief systems that, you drink the Mountain Dew for the caffeine. There's a pound of sugar in it or something.
Yeah.
And so I started really looking at my belief systems or my idioms or my reasoning that was keeping me fat. And, salads suck. Salads are tasteless. Well, a lot of veganish food, I should say, so I don't get swords and arrows, is if you can take those natural vegetables and fruits and stuff and make them taste really good, you can hack the dopamine taste bud manipulation that McDonald's and other companies have done so that they can get you hooked on the dopamine effect of it. A lot of it was some of my childhood sort of reasoning. And so it's interesting you talk about how that, all goes back to that childhood thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it now. It was very simple that when you were young, you learned a very important lesson that being good equals a reward, and you just carried that through.
Yeah, it's like
Simple.
I'm at the time I was like 46 or 45,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why in the hell does a 45-year-old need a reward because he took himself to the store? Like that's just dumb.
Exactly.
Exactly. And it's not a reward. It's adding on 3 pounds with a sugar high, and you're just like you're not rewarding yourself. You're killing yourself slowly. So it's basically death by food suicide. Kind of really, you think about it.
And with this whole weight loss injection, the talk about weight loss has become louder in the last few months. And the problem with those weight loss injections is when you stop doing them, you haven't re-educated the mental side.
Yeah. A lot of people that happens too. They get the stomach surgery, shrinks their stomach, and they're like, I'll lose weight now. and then they just keep on the same patterns of going to McDonald's every day or
Yeah.
fast food, and then they blow back up, and you're like, wait, I thought that was supposed to work. When I did go on Ozempic for about I think 4 months or 6 months, didn't do anything for me. In fact, I ended up gaining weight,
Right.
and that was with my intermittent fasting and everything I do. Part of it may have been though because I was also starting testosterone, so it may have been muscle. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
that's usually the claim I make when I put on weight, right? It's muscle.
It's muscle.
It's not that 10 burgers I ate yesterday, but that 2 liter Coke. But the so I actually lost 20 pounds after I got off of Zempic through my normal patterns of just intermittent fasting,
Yeah.
eating one meal a day,
Yeah.
eating healthy meals, and just doing that simple thing.
Yeah.
And that was all the difference. But yeah, we have these rules and subconscious patterns, and so I started listening to them all when I started losing weight, and that's what helped me unravel them. So
Yeah. I think there is no downside to being able to listen. So, with something like anxiety, for example, anxiety is a huge issue, and people think of anxiety as an illness or a disorder.
Mhm.
Anxiety is an emotion.
Oh.
Anxiety is the emotion that tells you when something is too important to ignore.
Mm.
So, for example, when you leave your house in the morning and you just check your pockets for your keys,
Mhm.
that's a tiny little bit of anxiety saying, check your pockets, just make sure you're not locking the keys in the house.
Mhm.
When you step out into the street and you look both ways to make sure you're not going to get run over, that's a little bit of anxiety.
Oh.
So, anxiety is a really, really important emotion. It's there to tell us, get up out of bed, you've got to go to work, or revise for this exam, or you've got a hot date coming up. Make sure you
Mhm.
smell nice. Because if you didn't, then you wouldn't get a second date. So, but people get really frightened of anxiety. They get butterflies in their stomachs
Mhm.
and go, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I need to be medicated. I need to, I need some sort of cure for this anxiety.
Mhm.
Imagine if you had no anxiety whatsoever. You
Mm.
would literally just step out into the street and get hit by a truck because you wouldn't see
Oh.
the value in looking both ways.
Mm. Well, that makes
So,
sense. That makes
yeah,
sense that it has a protective mode, but then sadly it doesn't always work as good for us. I guess that way or something.
no, the main thing with anxiety is to listen to it.
Mm.
So if anxiety is saying to you, this is going to go really wrong. This is terrible. I can't think of an example. Can you give me an example
Mhm.
of anxiety?
Speaking. A lot of people have a speaking anxiety.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's speaking anxiety. So the little bit of your crew will go, don't do it. I'm going to make you feel sick. I'm going to make you
Mhm.
shake. I will do anything to try and make you stop speaking.
Mhm.
It's not doing it to mess up your career. It's doing it because it's trying to protect you.
Oh.
So if you can talk to that little bit part of the subconscious and say, look, appreciate you're worried, but I'm the adult in the room now. I've got
Oh.
this. A good example, one that I use with a lot with clients is, do you have children? It doesn't matter if
No.
you don't have
No.
children. No, okay.
No.
But imagine a parent in the middle of the night and their kid starts screaming, Mum, 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 Dad, 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 there's a monster under the bed.
Hmm.
Now, do you run into their room, grab them out of the bed, run into the street shouting for the police and the army because there's a monster in your house?
No,
Or
I
do you
just tell them I put it there on purpose to make sure they
yeah,
stayed in bed.
there's,
So
there's
don't
no
come at me.
monster, but whatever you do, don't look at it in the eye. But no, you say to the child, there's no monster, it's okay, look under the covers, you're fine, you can go back to sleep. That's what you do with your anxiety.
Mm.
Your anxiety is saying, I'm scared, I'm a little child, I'm scared, I don't know what's happening. I need you to
Mhm.
listen to me. And if you don't listen to me, I will just talk louder and louder and louder. And if
Oh.
you still don't listen to me, I'll scream at you. And that's
Mm.
when people go, I've got an anxiety disorder because I've got these voices screaming in my head to tell me to be scared, and I don't know what of.
Sounds like every day with me.
Yeah, screaming voices in your head.
Screaming voices in my head. Yeah. I mean, it depends on which voice it is and which personality. There's about 20 personalities, so. Yeah. So, one thing we want to touch on too is, I believe, do we want to give a plug out to your equine webpage?
Not really. All
Okay.
my horses are now in their 20s, so they're all pretty much retired, enjoying life. We just put the food in at one end and clean at the other end, and yeah.
There you go. That's pretty much that's going to be on my that's going to be the epitaph that reads on my tombstone. He put the food in one end and it came out the other. That's what he did for 50, 60, 70 years, however long. I'm sure. Thanks, kids, for taking care of that part. Yeah. So with the equine service, anything we want to plug as we go out and
The one thing I would say is that the control practitioners, of course, I'm based in Portugal, but I've got colleagues in the States, in Seattle, and in the UK, and it's a really simple service. If somebody gets in touch with us, we will contact them within 24 hours. So if they go to the controlpractitioners.com, fill in the form, tell us what they want to talk about, we will get back to them within 24 hours. If what they want to work on is appropriate, we will do the free initial consultation, no obligation, within 7 days. So they will get to talk to somebody within 7 days. And I think it's crucial when somebody says, I've got a problem I need it dealt with, to know what the timescale is going to be. And if after the initial consultation they want to go ahead, it's all appropriate, we will start the treatment within 14 days. And you've got the 3 sessions, a once a week session. If at the end of the 3rd week we agree between us that we need to do more sessions, we do more sessions. And we do all that for a fixed fee, which in US dollars is $635.
Oh, wow. That's pretty expensive.
It's a fixed fee. It covers everything. And if they want to come back to us at a later stage, they can do. So it depends. Some people are in therapy for years. And I don't know, if they're paying $100 a time, then after 6 months, they've paid for that cost.
Plus, it's much cheaper than owning a horse. So,
yeah. Well, luckily, land over here is very cheap. We've got 3 hectares of land. So,
oh wow,
land is €1 a hectare. €1 a square meter. So
I'm moving over there. Eh? Here in America, it's out of control. You'd think we'd run out of real estate, and there's plenty of real estate. I've seen the maps.
Yeah,
so
you're in Las Vegas, aren't you?
There's still North Dakota and South Dakota. Yeah. They're pretty much empty up there, Wyoming and Montana. So, like, what's with the real estate prices? Eh? But everyone wants to live by the ocean and get the view. It's all about the view. So as we go out, how can people onboard with you? How can they reach out? How can they get to know you better? See if you're a mix on both those websites.
They can just look at those websites. They can get in touch via the websites. The email address is on there as well, so they can get in touch with me and say, I will always guarantee to get back within 24 hours. If I can't, I'll pass their details on to a colleague who do that. So we don't charge any money until we are pretty damn sure that we can help, that we can solve the problem. So there's no upfront payment. The payment only becomes due after that initial consultation, where we've ascertained that we can work with them and that the subconscious will work with us.
Yeah, because sometimes the subconscious is, they got a mind of their own, eh? They got a mind of their own, but that's why we need you. That's why we need your help. Yeah. So as we go out, to give people a final pitch out and .coms where they can find out more about you.
Yeah, sure. So if you are suffering from basically anything the mind learns, the mind can unlearn. So if you're suffering from a phobia, so from trauma, from PTSD, if you're in pain when you shouldn't be, if you have things like tinnitus or misophonia, or basically anything that comes from your mind but is affecting your life, then get in touch with us. We can tell you really quickly if we can help. If we can't help, well, at least that's one thing that you crossed off your list that you've tried. Because I'm not going to say I can do everything for everybody. I can't.
Yeah.
But we can always have the conversation, and it doesn't cost a penny to do that.
That's awesome. That's wonderful that you have that so people can take advantage of it. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Sarah. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
There you go. And thanks, Miles, for tuning in. And you've kind of explained, too, why we talk about so many of these things. It kind of makes sense that everything revolves around childhood, man. It's so important.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the things I was going to fall back to that you're discussing this, and this is we're going to really fall back. But one of the things that really happens to kids is a lot of people don't realize is divorces really impact them, and so they'll take the blame. Like, but did I cause the divorce? And it sticks with a lot of kids.
Absolutely.
That's probably
Or parents fighting, and I think it's important for people who are in that position to realize that yes, the strains of being in a family might have caused a problem, but it wasn't them as individuals.
I don't know. I told my kids that was the reason we got divorced. So, but I'm into guilt and shaming to get people.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's a good strategy in that case.
I mean, if it works, right? I did that before I sent them to military school till they can't call till they're 18 now. And
if not, try the secondary game. That's always happened.
Plus, I faked my death, so they're never going to be able to find me. Anyways, I moved to Barbados. Anyway, thank you very much for Sarah coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Very insightful.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And thanks, Ron, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Either refer the show or I'm going to pull this car over and come back there. Don't make me stop, kids. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next